Hey, rookies, and welcome back to the Rookie Farmer Podcast. If you are new here, I am your host, Alec. I am also the grower at Crop Culture Farm here in New Bern, Georgia. Thank you guys so much for listening. We're coming at you again with another farm vlog episode. As I probably say in all these episodes, these are really a treat for me. I enjoy getting to just talk to you guys, the listeners, directly. We can sort of talk shop, give you guys a little bit of update on what's going on our farm, be as open and transparent as possible so that hopefully you can either commiserate with us and understand that we're going through the same challenges, or if you are an aspiring farmer or you're hoping to get into this game in the future, you can get some real perspective and understanding on what the day to day, month to month, year to year perspective is like before you're just jumping into it, not really knowing what you're going to be doing, how much it might cost you, and so on and so forth. But before we dive too deep into the farm block episode, just wanted to take a moment right here at the top and remind you that we believe in value for value. That means that everything that you receive from us up until this point and in it to the future, we're never going to cost you a dime. We're never going to put it behind a paywall. We're never going to create any sort of a Patreon program where we ask for donations in exchange for premium content or freemium content or anything like that. And because we are giving you this amazing value that is the podcast, we ask that if you find it valuable, please consider kicking some of that value back our way in the form of a monetary donation. You can go to Cash App, Venmo, PayPal, and you can shoot us a couple bucks there. And like I mentioned before, and I just want to mention it again, and hopefully some of you guys can take us up on this, that if you send me your donation with a little note, we're happy to read your note. Or if you have a question, I'd be more than happy to answer it here live on the show. And so we can sort of have this little workshop thing going back and forth. So please consider helping support the show. It really goes a long way. I would love to upgrade some of this equipment. I've got this passable microphone. If you're just listening on audio, you can't see it, but it's very bright and colorful, and it changes color throughout the time that passes on the show. And normally I keep a little windscreen, but as you can see, the kids ripped it in half. So little things that you don't think about, like windscreens on microphones, upgrading camera equipment, upgrading internet and Wi-Fi so that we can continue to stream and make sure we have good connections with our guests. All of these sort of things are things that we want to be able to do at the show that are going to require a level of investment. So if you want to invest in the show, if you want to invest in the Rookie Farmer podcast, please consider kicking us a few bucks, $1, $5. It all goes a long way. Forever appreciative of those of you who have donated to the show. And a big thank you in advance to all of you who will be giving in the future. Also, I want to remind you that as this year comes to a close, as we're kind of wrapping up this month of October, we only have 2 months left before the end of the year. And that means that we are in full blown podcast recording, scheduling mode for the 2026 season of the Rookie Farmer podcast. I have big goals. I have ambitious dreams and ideas about what I want to do for the podcast in 2026. And I need your help. I have been reaching out to people furiously. We are scheduling podcasts to be recorded coming up here soon. I want to try to record as many over the winter as we can while it's slow and people have more availability. But there's plenty more room to go. I think we have 20 something people on the docket so far for the podcast. And I would love to be able to do an episode every single week of the year, which means we need roughly about 20 more ish, 25 ish more guests for the show. So if you have a farmer or you have an industry professional like an agronomist or a market manager, whoever it may be, that you would love to hear from on the show and you think that we could have a really amazing conversation, let me know. Shoot me an email, connect us with them if you have a contact for them, or feel free to reach out to them, DM them, and say, hey, fill in the blank. You should really reach out to Alec from the podcast. I think you'd be an excellent guest. we want to be able to talk to as many amazing people as possible. And you guys feeding us and continuing to give us new ideas is really going to make that possible. And a huge thank you and shout out to all of you guys who have reached out to me over this past season. Some of my favorite episodes have come from people who have just shot me a DM, shot me an email and said, "Hey, listen to the show. It's really great. Really love it. I have a really unique and interesting perspective that I think we could add to the show." And some of those, like I said, have been some of my favorite episodes. So if you are interested in being on the show, whether you're a first year grower or maybe you have a few years under your belt or you're a seasoned pro and you want to drop some wisdom and knowledge on all of us rookies here, just shoot me an email at cropculturefarm@gmail.com and we can connect and we can set up a time where we can sit and chat and make some amazing content for all you listeners out there. And just a reminder, I want to do other people's podcasts. It's a really great way to promote this show. It's a really great way to get our name out there and to grow the show, get more listeners, not because of any sort of financial incentive other than just I want more people to listen to the show. I want more people to be impacted, be inspired, be encouraged by the work that we're doing and the words that we're sharing. So if there's another podcast, another farm podcast, or maybe it's people that talk about local food or food access or anything like that that you think that we could fit into their niche, please reach out to them and connect us in the same way. And maybe we can do sort of a collaboration where they come on to our show and we chat for a little bit, and then I go on to their show and we chat a little bit more. I think that'd be super cool. So please help us build this content schedule for the 2026 season. I don't want to do this alone, and I need your help. Thank you so much. And just to give you guys a little bit of a teaser, a little bit of a taste of some of the things we do have coming up. Obviously, we have amazing episodes still coming the rest of this year, some of them that I'm really eager to hear about. And we're going to be taking a break here in a few weeks from the veg side of things. And we're actually going to be talking to an amazing pasture raised egg producer. So look forward to that. And we get to sit down with another good friend of mine to wrap up the season. I'm really excited about that podcast. It's going to be really good. And I'm not going to name any names because you never know how the schedules go, but I'm really excited about those sort of things. And as I mentioned, with the scheduling already happening for next year, I am so excited about some of the people that we're going to be talking to. There's some rather big names in this organic small scale agriculture space that I think you'll know that we'll be talking to, as well as some people who are really blazing new paths in the realm of marketing and social media and doing some really cool stuff, as well as we will be going back and doing follow-up conversations with some of our rookies from this past year, some of the names and some of the farms that you have heard from. And I'm so looking forward to those. It's going to be a bit of a catching up, sort of a homecoming. How did your season go? Let's talk about the things that you talked about on the last episode and were you able to achieve those goals? And what is your plan for this upcoming growing season? So I'm really looking forward to it. So stay tuned. Make sure you follow and subscribe on either your podcast platforms or on YouTube so that you get these episodes as soon as they come so you can consume all of the amazing content, and just like I do with all of the amazing podcasts that I listen to. So thank you guys so much. Now that we have all of that housekeeping stuff out of the way, let's dig into the meat and potatoes. Two things that I don't actually grow as of now, but you understand this. And let's get into the meat of what we are going to talk about in this farm vlog episode. So I'll give you kind of a quick little breakdown of what we're going to do, and then we'll go into each topic. So we'll cover the updates of what's actually happening on the ground here on the farm, as well as some market updates. And then we will round it all off with our favorite crops that we grow here on the farm for the fall. Some of them won't surprise you. They're tried and true plants that most people are growing this time of year. And some of them may surprise you, not necessarily because they're things that you've never heard of, but because maybe we're growing them at a time of year that either you can't in your growing region or that you maybe haven't considered. And so I'm really looking forward to sharing those with you. But let's jump right in with where we are at here on the farm. So as we record this, we're here in the second to last week of October, and the seasons are definitely changing. We're past that autumnal equinox. We are definitely getting into the shorter days of the year. It's dark in the morning when I wake up, and it's usually dark about the time that I'm wrapping up for the end of the day. And we're starting to get into a little bit of cooler temperatures. Now, just to give you guys a little bit of a refresher in the sort of the area that we're growing in, here in New Bern, which is sort of pretty much parallel with Atlanta, we're down here in zone 8A, and our expected first frost usually comes about the first or second week of November. So we still have several weeks to go where we're having really nice, warm fall temperatures, nothing too crazy. This week, we're having our first little sort of a cold front blowing in. We're going to be getting into the low 40s at night. But for the most part, we're still chugging away. It's so much great stuff. Nothing's really in fear of a frost. So we're able to pump out a lot of our uh, late season summer production that we have. One of those things is actually going to be on my list of our favorite fall crops to grow. But we are definitely in that transitional time where the farm is changing. Most of our fall and winter stuff is now in the ground, or it is going into the ground, going into greenhouses. We are ripping out old summer plants, and we are making as much space available to prepare for the fall season. For instance, we have essentially every bed full at the moment. There is not an empty space available on this farm, whether it's because we're waiting on something to finish up or we are just getting it in the ground for production for the wintertime. And for some stuff, it might not even be ready until the springtime, but there's no space whatsoever. It actually, we're so limited on space. It created some motivation for me to actually to open up a new plot. We had an area that we planted some summer squash and a little bit of winter squash back in the summertime, and it did all right. But we actually expanded that growing plot and have essentially doubled that growing space from about 500-foot beds to now we have 800-foot beds on that new plot. So it increases our growing space exponentially. Those three or so extra beds that we have are going to create far more production that we can have those longer season things like winter grown leeks, or our broccolini or winter radishes, and having that extra space is going to be a big game changer for us because, as most of you guys know who have any sort of growing experience, that wintertime is not really a time of high turnover. We're not planting every single week. We're not harvesting the same things week after week after week. There's a lot of cut and come again. There's a lot of picking the more mature leaves of things like our collard greens and our kales, and we're harvesting broccoli as it's available. And being able to just have as much plants in the ground is going to be a huge key to our success this winter. So, just to give you a little bit of context, this time last year and last winter, I was still working on the other farm. I would say a good half, if not maybe slight percentage more than half of the income that was coming in was actually coming from my work on the other farm. So when push came to shove, if we had a horrible crop failure or a big winter storm that would come and take out a huge chunk of our plantings, I always knew I had that other farm income to sort of sustain us, kind of get us through the season. And last winter, we only did a farmer's market every other Saturday. So we were able to sort of stockpile our harvests and take as much as we could every other week as opposed to taking every week. Now, obviously, that meant we were somewhat limited on the amount of sales that we could do. But because the sales were so exponentially more on those other market days, our first markets in Athens, we're doing significantly better, even doing every other week than we were previously at our other market this time last year. But this is going to be our first season doing this full time. So there's no other income coming in. There's no other revenue being generated other than what is coming out of the farm. And I'd be lying if I said I wasn't a little nervous. Not because I don't think that I planned well, or because I don't think that we can produce throughout the winter. I know we can, but just because you never know. Things are going to take longer than we think. Said those winter storms might come in, even though we're in a pretty mild growing season. Last year, we had a surprise snow that came, dumped about 4.5 inches, which for us is huge. I think in the 12 or so years that I've lived down here, we've never had a snow like that. To have 4.5 inches fall in just a matter of hours for a farm that is not prepared for that is a big deal. We had a farm down the road who actually lost a couple of greenhouses just because of the weight of the snow that sort of collapsed some of those tunnels. And we lost some crop and had some crop damage because of just the weight of the snow on top of row covers. And so we're going into the season with a lot more preparation, making sure that we have more hoops, we have tighter row covers, or we have plans in place to get the snow off of the greenhouses. Which also reminds me, we're going into this season with a new big greenhouse. So last year we only had our 20 by 40-foot tunnel, which is really great. And we got 4 beds in there that we could crank out lettuces and baby greens and baby roots all winter long. And that was a big game changer for us. But now, since we have added the 30 by 72-foot tunnel, we have essentially doubled or really sort of tripled the amount of covered growing space that we'll be able to produce in, which means we can crank out so much more frost sensitive or tender things that just can't really take the cold out in the field, even under row cover. And it'll mean that we're able to sort of extend that growing season, push things from summer deeper into the fall. We can take the things that maybe wouldn't be ready until the spring if they're grown outside. We can get a little bit of warmer temperatures in that closed environment, and we can get some of those crops out much sooner. So I think that's going to be another big game changer for us, which is the whole reason why we opted to get that other tunnel was for this time of year, just like this, so that we can produce as much as possible in our first season going through winter at farming full time. Any of you guys who have done this before, you can probably think back to your first full-time winter season, or maybe just your first winter season growing, and thinking about the hesitations or the fears or the nervousness that maybe you had, some of the anxieties around we don't know what the winter is going to hold. And so hopefully you could sympathize with me. And if you have any advice, both on just the mindsets to have, or just on some of the tricks of the trade to have a super successful winter season, please shoot them my way. I've been furiously re-listening to a bunch of episodes of the Winter Growers podcast from Claire Coleman, just to sort of keep my brain in that mindset to prepare for this fall and winter season. Because this not that it's going to make us or break us. I think we're in a pretty good spot that we don't have to worry about being broke completely. But this will just help us have a super successful fall and winter, so that maybe we don't have to dip into savings as much. Maybe we can take some of that money and reinvest it into more projects. Maybe we add a third tunnel so that we can increase that winter production even more. There's so many different things that we need to do. And like I mentioned with that savings, not only is the farm transitioning to fall and we're filling things out, but we're also transitioning in the way that we are thinking about our finances. So much of the springtime and early summer is really focused on just getting everything that we need. Make sure that we have all that fertilizer, make sure that we're planting as many things as we can. If we have a tool that's broken, it's got to get fixed now. We have to make sure that the walk-in cooler is running efficiently and functioning properly, so that we can make sure that we're storing all of this amazing produce that we're bringing in all summer long and in a nice, cool environment, so that we can deliver it really great, fresh, and healthy to our customers and to our chefs. And to say the least, I've been spending a lot of money over the summer. I would say that August and September were definitely sort of the highest spending months that we have had on the farm to date. There's in a lot of things. Some of them are unexpected. You blow a hydraulic cylinder on a tractor and you got to spend $400 on that, or you have to increase the insulation in the cooler because it's not staying the temp, or a lot of different things. And our goal for the next 2 months is basically to run the farm as lean as possible. Now, some of the reasons that we're able to do that is because we made those investments earlier in the season when we had greater cash flow. We had more revenue coming in so that we knew that we could afford to make those purchases. We knew that we could afford to reinvest back into the farm. And now, as we approach these months where sales are going to drop, sales are going to dip, it's just a natural part of the farming ebb and flow of working with the seasons. Some of it is going to be due to the fact that it's going to be colder and shorter days. So things are going to be growing slower. So there will be less to harvest. But also, as the days change, there are going to be less people at the farmers market. I'm not gonna lie and say that a November farmers market is going to be just as busy as a July farm, but we have to be prepared for that sort of dip in sales, and we also need to be prepared for that December, January surge in spending again. We're buying seeds for the 2026 season. We're stocking up on fertilizer, or maybe we're investing in more greenhouse stuff so that we can sell more plants next year because that was such a good moneymaker for us this past spring. I know that we're going to hit a nice surge in spending at the beginning of the year, as we have done every year up until this point. And so by keeping the fall season as sort of the lean season is going to set us up for even more success. So we're trying to put off things that we don't necessarily need right now. We're trying to plan for maybe family events, vacations in another part of the season, maybe when we have a little more time, so that we can just squirrel as much money away as we can. In a lot of ways, it's no different for us than it is for the animals and nature that are all around us as we're out there working in the fields. At the end of the day, we are all subject to Mother Nature and the changing of the seasons. And even though we're not squirreling away nuts and we have modern conveniences like refrigerators and grocery stores and all of the things that we never really have to worry about where our food's coming from over the winter, we have to think about things that are other resources, like the financial resources that we have to keep this farm going. So as our furry brothers and sisters out there are furiously trying to bulk up and to store away food for the winter, we're furiously trying to squirrel away, no pun intended, as much capital as we can so that we can make those big investments at the end of the season. And some of the other projects that we have going on the farm have been a little bit more challenging than I thought they would. So in the last farm block episode, I talked about how we had started our microgreens operation. We've added that to sort of the repertoire of what we're offering. And for better or for worse, it seemed like the first month or so just went off without a hitch. It's like we were selling everything that we could produce. We had no disease issues. Everything was just perfect, dare I say it. It was just absolutely perfect. And over the last month or so, whether it's user error or it's just sort of beginner's luck that has sort of worn off, we're starting to hit some of the challenges with microgreens, and it's turning out to be harder than I thought it would be. And I'm beginning to understand why so many people put a lot of emphasis on sterilizing your equipment and making sure that things are being grown in a proper environment and ensuring that you have your seeding schedule down pat. That's been one of the things that has really thrown me for a loop is for whatever reason, without having something like dedicated on the calendar. It's like, all right, Tuesday, we sow broccoli and we sow peas. And then on Thursday, we sow radishes so that we know that we have those in, 10 to 14 days, they're ready to go. And there's been a couple of weeks where if we got off a little bit, we were just totally thrown for a loop, where maybe we show up to the market and we don't even have the snap or not the snap peas, the pea shoots, which is a really good seller for us. And our restaurants like to buy those as well. Or we're scrambling to harvest really small little radish micros that Probably needed 2 or 3 more days to get a little bit more growth on them. But we're just, sort of scrambling to get whatever we can so that we can show up with those things at the market. And so, so like I said, all of the things that I've heard on the growing microgreens podcast that Diego puts out, as well as some other farmers that I've talked to and other things that I've read and listened to, I'm beginning to understand why these things are important. Not just because these are the rules, but because these are the keys to success for growing microgreens. But I will say that they've been surprisingly doing well as far as the sales are concerned. We weren't the only ones selling it. There was one other farm that has microgreens, and I chatted with them before I did it, like, hey, what sort of numbers are you getting? What are you charging? What varieties are you doing? And I was totally transparent. Hey, I'm thinking about getting into this. You guys are the only ones. I fear there's sort of a bit of an untapped resource that we can still hit here, and realizing that they bring them every week, but maybe they don't sell as many as they want. And I felt like there was a pretty big open market to be able to hit there. And it's been doing well. We're not selling 20, 30 clamshells a week, but we're consistently hitting between 15 and 20. On the occasional slow week, maybe we'll only sell 10 clamshells of like a radish microgreens mix. But it's selling surprisingly well, and it's really becoming a nice little consistent part of our weekly sales. And it's definitely going to be something I'm going to continue. The restaurants have enjoyed them. Now, are they buying them as much as I'd like for them to be? Not necessarily. That's one of the things that I'm learning working with chefs, is that sometimes they can be fickle, and it's not just with microgreens; it can be with anything. And if you're a chef, and God forbid you're one of my chefs who happens to be listening to this, don't hear me and think I'm complaining. I understand, that your menus are changing, seasons are changing. There's so many different things that are available, and understand that, maybe you're not going to buy the same exact thing week in and week out. Even if that would be awesome. But it's one of those things that, like with something like arugula or carrots, or those things that you're planting a lot of it in hoping that, several weeks or so down the road, it's going to be available, and then you're going to be able to move it all because these people want it. Microgreens are sort of a concentrated snapshot of that, where, I can take 20 clamshells of a radish mix to the market, and, that's roughly 1.75 ounces or whatever. And if the chef tells me, it's like, yeah, man, I want 16 ounces, I want a pound of micros every single week, and they do them for 3 weeks. And now that's added to the schedule. It's added to the system of how much soil we're using, how much seed that we're buying and using, and all of these sort of things. And all of a sudden they're like, yeah, we don't need any more. It can definitely throw things for a bit of a loop. So we're finding the ebbs and the flows and finding that rhythm on our microgreens production. But I will say I've been extremely happy. Shameless plug here: the X Wave trays that Modern Grower sells, that I bought with my own money, just to fully put that out there, have been really wonderful. I've used regular 10, 20 trays, and those are fine. I've even used random nursery trays that I could just sort of use and just shove soil into to do it. I've tried just about everything, and these have been a big help for that. They're really rigid, they're really strong, and having the drainage holes and everything involved with them and how shallow they are has really allowed us to not overdo it on our soil starting or our soil mix, and allows us to get a nice, good, close cut because of the depth of them. We need to invest in some more bottom trays before we bring all that production inside, because right now it's outside in the propagation seed house. So I've been really happy with those, and I'm looking forward to the microgreens production in the future. I don't know if we're going to incorporate more. Chef will be like, oh, I can do baby basil or baby this or whatever. And sometimes I can feel the temptation to go all in on those particular things. But I think right now we're going to stick with our tried and true of our radishes, some broccoli, and then our pea shoots. Those have been really good. Another thing that we're going to begin to change here on the farm is creating more growing space, whether it's taking beds out of production for veg production, or it's going to be creating more growing space, whether it's protected in the greenhouse, kind of in like pots or grow bags, or in some other outside space. We're going to begin to dedicate more growing time and energy and investment into our specialty flower, edible flower, and herb production, primarily for chefs. I've really been pushing over the last few months to incorporate more chefs onto our lists. We're working with several more bartenders. We just added a new one this past week. And, things like the edible violas and nasturtium leaf and French marigolds, so many other really amazing crops and things like cilantro and tulsi, holy basil, lemon balm, all these things that our bartenders really love using. And I want to be able to offer as much of that to them as possible. If they need to be able to do a big batch of some sort of a syrup or things that they want to use local, fresh herbs with, I want to be able to offer them 2, 3, 4 pounds of that so they can take it, make a big batch of that at a time. So it's going to be time for us to begin to dedicate more of our space to that. And hopefully that is, once again, another little niche that we can sort of carve out here on the farm that can increase our sales, increase that revenue, and make us a more sustainable farm in the end. Plus, we are able to incorporate a lot of those things into our customer products that we sell at our farmer's market, or maybe we're selling off the farm. Things like our fancy salad that have red vein sorrel, or maybe they'll have some of the nemesis arugula, which looks really similar with that red vein, edible flowers. It was a really amazing product that we offered last year, or no, earlier this year. And it was a surprise hit. And so by creating more production space for these specialty crops, it'll both help us on the wholesale side as well as on the retail side. So I'm excited about that. And last thing on the farm updates, I had an opportunity to be able to do several of our CNG, certified naturally grown, farm inspections. One of them was a farm that was roughly about our size, but they're 3, 4 years ahead of us. And that was really great. Just to anytime you get to go visit a farm, see their operations, see what they're doing, it's a joy. It's a real blessing. You get to talk with farmers, ask them 1,000 questions, see how they're doing. What are their successes? What have been their failures? Learn from people. And we also did a farm inspection for a pretty large farm. I think they're on about 20 acres of production in total, 2 locations, wholesale, CSA, selling to a sort of a co-op, as well as doing 5 farmers markets a week. It's a much bigger operation, but the cool thing is they're essentially growing in a lot of the same ways we are. 30-inch beds, 100-foot beds, doing it all sort of human scale. And the farmer that runs that operation has a really great name for himself. He's built this amazing reputation in our area and probably even outside of our area, if I'm being honest. And so to be able to go and to not only help him out by doing his inspection, making sure that he is up to date on all of his stuff so he can still provide the most amazing naturally grown products through CNG, but also just to be able to ask him every question under the sun. That's one of the real gems that is the CNG peer-to-peer farm inspection program that they have there. I'm not just there with the clipboard, just asking a bunch of questions and checking it off, and then I leave and oh, we got that done. It really becomes this way of us to work together. I can give my input, I can ask questions and get feedback, so on and so forth. And so I've been really excited about doing that. I have to sort of pull back a little bit, because if I say yes to every inspection invite that I'm given, I'm not gonna have any time to grow, because sometimes you have to drive a little bit. One of them I had to drive an hour away, which I'm totally fine to do. By committing to too many farm inspections, one, I'm limiting the amount of people that I can get to come and do my inspections in the future. So you have to have a little bit of time in between. But also, it's just, it's a big time commitment. But I'm really, really looking forward to both having our inspection done, probably at the end of November, as well as being able to do more inspections in the future. And we are so close to completing our last big project for the fall, something that probably should have been done a couple months ago. But whether it's delays in shipping or just time, we're about to finally put the doors on the big greenhouse, on the big hoop house, so that will be all buttoned up. I actually just finished getting the doors put up today, and then now we'll finish covering everything in plastic, hopefully this week, so that will be nice and buttoned up and tight for the impending frosts that are coming soon. I think that's everything that we wanted to cover here on the farm updates. If you guys have had any sort of these similar experiences, whether it's sort of that transition, that rhythm, that change that's coming with the fall and winter season, or maybe you have some tips or recommendations on the microgreens, or you want to know more about the CNG inspection process, please feel free to reach out. Like I said, shoot me an email, shoot me a DM. I'd love to talk about it. I'd love to hear your guys' input on that sort of stuff. All right, let's get into some of the updates from our farmers market. So right off the bat, as most of you guys here living in the US are probably aware of, maybe experiencing the real repercussions of it, is that our government is currently under what they call a shutdown. Now, obviously, our life still goes on, things are continuing to happen, but a lot of funding that goes to different government organizations is either frozen or it's stopping, and that's one of the things that has affected us and affected our farmers market. You guys remember just a few months back, we sat down with Abigail Darwin of Folsom Lake, Georgia, and she told us everything about their programs that they do, Fresh for Less, which doubles up the SNAP dollars as well as the Farm RX program. And those things have been a huge benefit to our farm and to our sales at the farmers market. One, it's allowed us to reach customers that normally wouldn't come to a farmers market because they, maybe they're less financially positioned to be able to purchase, higher quality, if we're being honest, more expensive produce than what you can get at a big box grocery store. But also, it has allowed us to people's purchases more sustainable, because then they can actually, not only can they get this fresh produce, but then they can actually double those dollars so that maybe they can buy more, so that they're not just supplementing, but they're actually replacing a lot of those purchases that they're making, and they're being able to shop local and all this sort of stuff. If you haven't listened to that, please go back and listen to that episode. That was one of the more heartwarming, almost tear-jerking episodes that we did. And since then, I've been able to build a bit of a relationship with Abigail, and it's been really wonderful. And part of that has led to the realization of really what this government shutdown has meant for our farmers market. We got an email sort of unexpectedly, beginning of the month of October, basically saying, hey, the Fresh for Less program that we do at the market is going to have to stop, because the funding for that, because in order to double people's SNAP dollars to do that, the money has to come from somewhere. And a lot of it comes from additional USDA funding and funding from other programs around state and federal funds. Those things are stopping because of the government shutdown. And I got a call from Abigail, because after that conversation that we had, she said, hey, and she may have actually mentioned it on the podcast, but she said, hey, can you make yourself available? If we need you to be able to lend your voice, share your words of what these programs mean to you and how they impact you, would you be available to be able to share that with us so that we can pass that along to our lawmakers and the movers and the shakers to ensure that this funding doesn't stop? And sure enough, it was within an hour of me getting that email from the market manager. I got a call from Abigail saying, hey, it's time. I need you. They were furiously trying to put a package together, put stuff together to send to our lawmakers here in Georgia to ensure that those funds could be released so that we can continue to provide our communities with the most amazing, fresh, nutrient dense local produce that is possible. And we unfortunately cannot do that without those funds being released. And so she reached out to some other growers as well, and they put something together to send to said lawmakers and people of power. And I'm happy to report that after only really actually only 1 week of those funds being frozen, they were released so that now those programs are continuing again. Because, like I've said in the past, that equates to roughly about 25% of our sales on a weekly basis. And sometimes it's up to a $250 to $300 swing in our sales in any given farmer's market because of those programs that we're suddenly just stopped like that. And also, that just means there's customers that I've built a relationship with, the market that I don't get to see because if they can't afford to shop the market without these programs, I'm not going to be able to see them. And they have to go back to buying the same food that everybody else does. And so, thankfully, through the work of Georgia Wholesome Wave, through our farmers market in Athens, and the dedicated work of Abigail, just give her another shout out. They were able to get those funds released, and we were able to sort of pick up where we left off and keep on trucking along and doing that. And just maybe because it'll be encouraging, I would like to share the little bit that I added to the packet. Um, she asked me to just write a couple of paragraphs about what these programs mean to me. And I'd love to just share it with you guys so you guys can hear my heart. I don't like to talk about politics. I don't really want to talk about politics. And this is not a political issue. Um, Unfortunately, sometimes it kind of rubs up with politics. But I would just love for you guys to hear from my heart where I'm at on food access. And hopefully, you're right there with me. And if not, maybe you will see a new perspective that will help you and understand how important these programs really are, not just for me, but for you as growers and for all of the eaters in our communities. So this is what I wrote. In a day when disrupted supply chains and rising food costs are affecting our communities, creating access to local fresh produce is more important than ever. The funding that makes this access possible is an intrinsic part of our farming operation. We operate primarily as a market farm, and roughly 1/4 of our weekly revenue comes directly from the funds made available from SNAP and its supporting programs. Not only is our farm operation sustained by these programs, but our family is as well. We receive SNAP benefits and are able to supplement our children's meals with nourishing foods outside of what we grow ourselves. I know that this situation is not unique amongst the farming community. The success of American farms is directly connected to the success of food access programs in this country. Share that with you not to, brag about how wonderful my writing skills are. And not really great. Sometimes it just feels like chat GPT, just throw in some nice words to sound eloquent. But the reality of it is, this has really awakened something in me that was not there previously, was realizing that through farming, I have built a connection with people that is much deeper than just a hello, buy this from me. We have this sort of transactional thing, but we're putting food on people's tables. And this farmers market is feeding the community of Athens and the surrounding areas. And it's not just people within the, Clark County, Athens area, but it's people that drive 30, 45 minutes to this farmers market because they know it's a hub of nourishing, fresh local food, not just vegetables, but eggs and dairy and meat and prepared foods and all of these different things. And we really created a bit of a paradise in a world that is just saturated with processed, low quality food. And like I said, this is just sort of enlivened this in me to realize how important these programs are and how important growing food for people really is. And really proud of the work that Georgia Wholesome Wave has done. And I'm super proud of the work that the Athens Farmers Market has done to champion these programs, to champion food access. And I'm honored to be a part of that. And I look forward to more of that. And I'm so happy that we are able to ensure that funding would continue even during the government shutdown. And so, if you're interested in the work that Georgia Wholesome Wave is doing, you can check out their website. You can just search Georgia Wholesome Wave, get more information, or find a program in your state that does something similar, working with people's SNAP dollars to double them and all that. And in a lot of these programs are also able to work off of the farm so that even if you don't sell at a farmer's market, maybe you've got a CSA or a farm stand, they can work with you as well. because we need to ensure that as many people in this country and around the world have access to this amazing high quality food that we grow. The last thing I want to say on the farmers market side of things is I'm super, super happy with the stuff that we're bringing right now. This is probably my favorite time of the year as a grower. Spring is really great. Summer's really great. Winter is great in its own sort of way. But, the month of October, November, we have this just amazing bounty of harvest that we're bringing. We have some of our late season peppers and eggplant and cucumbers, as well as the beginnings of all of our fall crops, our brassicas, our root veg. The greens are really jamming right now. And I'm just really, really happy with the way the table looks. I'm really happy with the quality of the stuff that we're filling it with. And I'm really happy to see customers buying all that. So here's to a successful October. And we hope to have several more weeks of really amazing produce before we start to move closer to winter time. All right, we've come to the end. We have come to our favorite fall crops that we grow here at Crop Culture Farm. So the first thing on our list, favorite thing to have in the fall, is probably not surprising to anybody, but it's our cool season brassicas. Things like broccolini, cabbage, kale, lacinato kale, collard greens, all of those various brassicas. They're just so great this time of year. As the days are getting shorter and the days are getting a little cooler and the nights are getting a little cooler, they are really thriving. The lack of pest pressure, the suppressed pest pressure, I should say, really allows them to really thrive. So if you're not growing brassicas in the fall, what are you doing wrong? Because this is this is what they were made for. They were made for this time of year. They're putting out so much growth in preparation for the winter time, and then they're able to just basically sit there all winter long and take the cold like a champ. But we're really happy with all of our fall brassicas, especially three in particular: our broccolini, which if you've listened to the podcast for any length of time, or the farm startup, you've probably heard me talk about ad nauseum, but also the curly kale. I'm a bigger fan of the lacinato or dinosaur kale, as some people call it. But man, those customers just love good old fashioned, curly uh, Pizza Hut salad bar kale, and it's been really cooking for us. It's so good; it doesn't mind the heat at the beginning of fall, and it really, really does well in the cold as we end fall and into winter. And then the baby red kale, that's been a newer one for us this year, doing red Russian kale that we plant as a baby green, doing roughly 7 or 8 rows on a 30-inch bed with the Jang, and coming in for a few weeks per bed. And that's been a really popular item, as well as just a super, super amazing crop to grow. It grows super fast. It any sort of pest pressure pretty well. You have a little bit of aphid issues here and there, and it's so good to eat. Oh, it's just so small and tender and amazing. I really love it. The next thing on our list that is our favorite thing to grow in the fall time is sugar snap peas. Here, at least, for most people, the snap peas are generally a spring crop. They plant them sort of late winter. They don't mind the cold. They can germinate in the cold. And then as the temperatures steadily start to warm up a little bit, those come on and they're really sweet and they're really tender in the springtime. And just about everybody at the market will have them. But this time of year, I think last year we just tried it sort of as dumb luck. Just a rookie try. We did a late summer sowing of them for a fall harvest, and they have been really great. I'm not the only one that has them. There's somebody else that does them, but we're able to offer this nice little surprise for people. Like, oh, we didn't know there'd be snap peas this time of year. This is so great. And and of course, they're amazing to snack on. The kids love eating them. I love eating them. They grow so well. So yeah, snap peas are another one of those amazing late summer sown fall crops. And they're only going to get better as the nights get cooler. And maybe if we can get a frost or two, they're going to develop so many more sugars. They're going to be so sweet, so tender. Really looking forward to the next few weeks of sugar snap pea harvests. And another one that is more of a winter crop, but we push it a little bit early and sell them as like a bunched root. But winter radishes, things like watermelon radish, daikon radish, like a black Spanish radish. I think the Johnny's one is Neurotondo, and I unfortunately cannot pronounce the one from by mowing because it's some crazy German name, Schwartz something. But doing those kind of larger storage radishes as a large bunched radish have really been a great success for us. You know, because of the waning daylight hours, and as the temperatures are getting colder, they put on root really fast. They're trying to store up as much energy to survive the winter as possible so that they can inevitably go to seed in the springtime. But right now, they're putting all their energy into root production, which means that we get really big, great, juicy roots with nice, good, crisp greens on top that we can do, as opposed to maybe a bunch of hackeri turnips or salad radishes or something where maybe it's between 6 and 10 radishes. We're doing like a larger bunch of maybe 3 or 4, bigger black Spanish radish roots. And they look wonderful on the table. You get all those amazing colors, like from a purple daikon or from a watermelon radish or these big black radishes. And those have been, they're wonderful to eat. They got a nice spice. And the cool thing is we sow them really densely. So we are able to thin out sort of the golf ball to not quite tennis ball size, but we'll say golf ball-ish size radishes. Maybe some of them are more baseball, tennis ball size, and make those nice bunches. And then what we're doing is we're freeing up that space in row to allow the rest of the radishes to put on size so that we can have them as our big winter storage radishes. So we're able to really maximize the amount of space that we have in those beds, maximize the amount of production that we can do on a crop that, it's not going to be 21 days like like a French breakfast radish. It's going to be, 40, 50, 65 days, maybe even into 75 as the winter season comes along. And so by being able to essentially have 2 crops out of one bed is a really wonderful benefit to the farm. And they just taste really good. Who doesn't love a good spicy radish? And another one that has been a great fall crop for us this year has been our cucumbers. For most people, cucumbers are not really a fall crop. They're a summer crop, but because of our sort of later frosts and our milder falls that we have, and having that protection in the greenhouse, we're able to be cranking out cucumbers this time of year. I harvested a bunch today. They look wonderful. The squash bugs and the cucumber beetle have sort of gone away, and they're hiding out and getting ready to hibernate for the winter time. And so the pest and disease pressure is significantly less now than it was in earlier parts of the summer season where it's wet and it's humid and you're fighting disease and pests every single day. Right now, we're just getting huge, amazing cucumber plants that we're growing in the greenhouses that are churning out just tons and tons, not literal tons, but just pounds and pounds of cucumbers. So people can have that nice little taste of a summer crop here in October, and we'll probably be harvesting them into November easily, as long as we don't get any crazy temperatures. So I really love fall cucumbers. And just kind of on that note of sort of summer crops growing in fall, at least around here, something we didn't really dedicate the space to this year, just because we weren't able to really get that second rotation in. But I know people really, really love growing like fall peppers, which we do have some fall peppers that we're about to start harvesting, and as well as fall tomatoes. And everyone who knows their stuff, maybe not your average customer, but anyone who knows their stuff or their chef or whatever, they love those fall tomatoes because, like I said, it's just that taste of summer. As the days are getting shorter, maybe it's gloomy and overcast and a little chilly outside, and to get like a nice, ripe, Cherokee purple tomato out of the greenhouse, at Halloween is super amazing. And I want to say last year at the other farm, I think we harvested some tomatoes even like right up until Christmas. We had a mild early winter, and between row cover and greenhouses and um, babying those tomatoes as much as possible, yeah, we're able to churn out tomatoes all the way till Christmas time, which is amazing. So I would definitely don't sleep on the fall production of summer crops if you have the protected space to be able to do it. And on the baby root side of things, we're sort of phasing out our salad radish production. We don't love them as much. Everybody has them. It feels like the market's a little saturated. And frankly, we have some like black rot issues in the soil and some soil borne pest problems that have made growing good salad radishes difficult. But one thing that um, we love to grow this time of year is our Hakurei turnips, salad turnips, Tokyo turnips, the small white turnips that are really great. You eat raw, you can still cook with them, whatever. But they're just jamming. We start them in the summertime and we do some summer production of them. But greens are getting hammered with disease. Roots are being eaten alive by just about anything. But the ones that we're pulling out right now, they have perfect, nice, tall greens on them. Good, healthy roots that are starting to sweeten up as the days are getting cooler. And I found that you get a late fall Hakurei turnip, they're almost juicy. They're just so good, and those sugars really begin to develop as they're sort of defending against the cold. And it's almost like eating a fruit. It's so wild. You just get this sweet, juicy turnip that you just pulled out of the ground and brushed off and ate. It's a really wonderful eating experience. So we love growing our Hakurei turnips all fall and into the early winter. And then the last one on my list here of our favorite fall crops to grow here at Crop Culture Farm is herbs, cilantro, some late planted basil, dill, parsley, some of the other herbs that I mentioned earlier, those specialty ones. With the perennials, we're able to cut everything way back and actually get a second flush this time of year, like we do on the hyssop and the lemon balm and some of those more medicinal culinary herbs, like or the not culinary herbs, but the specialty herbs. But then with the culinary herbs, it's the same thing. There's not as much of a fear of them bolting because days are getting shorter and cooler, and so they just put on luscious, amazing green growth, and we can just harvest tons and tons of bunches of basil and parsley and dill and cilantro and those are one of those things that sell really well at the farmers market. They're a little labor intensive just because they take longer to pick all those little leaves. And maybe you can't sell them for quite the premium you can for a bunch of carrots, but they're a big favorite at the farmers market, and they're a big favorite for us because who doesn't love fresh herbs in the kitchen? There you have it, folks. That's I'll run it down real quick just so you can remember. We have our fall brassicas, snap peas, winter radishes, bunched. We have cucumbers, Hakurei turnips, and our fresh culinary herbs. Those are our favorite things to grow here in the wintertime. And obviously, or in the fall. And obviously, there's other things. We have our arugula, we have lettuces, we have mustard greens. All of those other greens are like, obviously, this is the amazing time of year for those as well. But we can kind of grow those more or less year round, and they do pretty well. But these are just some of my favorites. Thank you guys so much for listening to this episode. Sometimes it just feels like I'm screaming into the ether and don't really get much feedback on these episodes, but they've become a favorite of mine, and I'm so grateful that you guys are listening, and that hopefully you're learning from me as I share some transparency about our farm and what we're learning here. Just dipping our toe into our third season here. At the beginning of October, we celebrate our 2-year anniversary here at Crop Culture Farm, and so I'm looking forward to what this third year of growing has to offer and what the 2026 growing season will bring to us. Thank you guys so much for listening, and a huge shout out to Diego and the whole team over at Modern Grower for making the show possible. I still pinch myself every time I sit in front of this computer and get to realize that I get to make podcasts and I get to talk to people and I get to live out my nerdy high school NPR loving self and get to make this content for you guys. And none of this would be possible without without Diego and the whole team over there at Modern Grower. So huge shout out to you guys. And if you need a place to find things like pre-cut landscape fabric, row cover, quick coops, Jang seeders, paper pot transplanters, the X-Wave trays from Microgreens, and so much more, like the Sumi Soaker. Oh my God, that's been a game changer for us. All of these amazing tools are only available at shop.moderngrower.co. You can go over there. They have curated an amazing list of tools. There's not going to be pages and pages and pages of weird little tools that you've never even thought about needing just to find the thing that you think you need. They've done the work to give you the list of exactly what you're going to need to become a successful grower. So, like I said, go over to shop.moderngrower.co. You can check all that out. And please go listen to all the other podcasts: Farm Small, Farm Smart, In Search of Soil, Microgreens podcast, the relaunch / reboot of The Urban Farmer that Diego's doing over there, and everything else that he puts out. It's a wealth of knowledge. It's made me a better grower, and I know it will make you a better grower as well. Just another reminder that we believe in value for value. So, like I said at the top of the episode, if this brings you value, please consider kicking it back our way in the form of a bit of a donation. You can go to Cash App, Venmo, PayPal, look for Crop Culture Farm or at Crop Culture Farm. Send us $1, send us $5, attach a note and a question. We would love to answer it on the show. All right. You guys survived another episode. If you made it this long, you're one of the real ones. So thank you to you. But this has been another amazing farm vlog and another episode of the Rookie Farmer Podcast. I am your host, Alec, and until next time, blessings and peace.